The engineer slapped the console twice. Nothing. Michael stepped back from the mic and stared through the control room glass. One small detail caught his eye. The level meter still moved. 3 minutes earlier, everything had been fine. The Jackson 5 stood around the RCA 44 ribbon microphone, a silver brick hanging from the ceiling, the kind that picked up every breath. Joe Jackson paced behind them, arms crossed, watching the wall clock. 7:05 on a Sunday morning in late 1967. Peak listening time for WKRM, the only station in town that played R&B before noon. 12 minutes of airtime. That's what the station manager had promised. Live, not recorded. Joe had driven 6 hours overnight to make it happen. But here's what nobody in that studio wanted to say out loud. 2 talent scouts from a Chicago label were listening right now. Pen in hand, rating sheet in front of them, one finger hovering over the dial. One bad impression, one dead air second too long, and the callbacks would stop. Forever. 30 seconds, the engineer called through the intercom. His name was Dennis, maybe 23, skinny kid with thick glasses and a coffee stain on his shirt. First month on the job. The regular guy had called in sick. Michael adjusted his position, shoulders loose, hands ready. The smell of burnt coffee mixed with dust from the ventilation system. Old building, old wiring, the kind that hummed too loud when it rained. Jermaine tapped his thigh twice. Tito cracked his knuckles. Marlon yawned. Jackie checked his hair in the control room glass reflection. 15 seconds. The on-air sign glowed red above the door. 10. Dennis cued the intro music. A pre-recorded instrumental on a reel-to-reel machine, the tape spinning smooth and steady. 5. Joe stopped pacing. The music started. 8 bars of up-tempo groove. Michael took a breath, ready for his entrance on bar 9. Then the lights dimmed. Not all the way, just a flicker, like someone had touched a dial they shouldn't have. The overhead fluorescence buzzed. The reel-to-reel kept spinning. Dennis looked up, confused, but not alarmed. Michael's hand went up, palm out, the signal to wait. Nobody saw it. Joe was staring at the ceiling lights. The brothers were already moving into position. Bar 9 hit. Michael opened his mouth. The power dropped again, harder this time. The fluorescence went half dark. The intercom crackled. The microphone went silent. The tape kept playing, thin and distant through the monitor speakers. But the main broadcast line, the signal going out to 15,000 listeners across 3 counties, cut to static. Dennis froze. His hand hovered over a row of switches, unsure which one to hit first. The station manager burst through the control room door, face red, already yelling. Joe turned to the glass, jaw tight. "Fix it." Michael stepped back from the mic. But he wasn't watching the panic. His eyes locked on the equipment rack behind. Dennis, the row of black boxes with glowing tubes and needle gauges. 1 meter still moved. The VU needle on the phone line mixer bouncing gently, responding to something. But what? And then, wait, look at this. The broadcast console was dead, but the phone line ran on a separate circuit. Different power source, the telephone company's own grid. That needle was picking up the dial tone, which meant the impossible might not be impossible. Michael walked toward the wall phone near the door. Beige plastic, curly cord, the kind every business had. "Michael, stay put," Joe snapped. He ignored him, lifted the receiver, put it to his ear, dial tone, clear and strong. Dennis was still arguing with the manager. "I can switch to the backup transmitter, but it'll take 10 minutes to warm up. We don't have 10 minutes, the spot ends in 8. 8 minutes. The scouts would hang up by then. They always did, never gave second chances. Michael could almost hear the click of their phone disconnecting, the scratch of a pen crossing off Jackson 5 from the callback list. 8 minutes to save everything. Michael turned to the control room glass and raised the phone receiver. Dennis stopped talking. The manager blinked. Joe frowned. "What are you doing?" "The phone line works," Michael said. Calm, matter of fact. "Can you plug it into the mixer?" Dennis stared at him. "Broadcast through a phone line? The quality's gonna be awful, tinny, compressed. It'll sound like you're calling from a basement. But it'll be live." Silence. The wall clock ticked. 7 minutes left. The manager checked his watch. Joe stepped forward. "You can actually do that?" Dennis scratched his neck. "Technically, yeah. The phone mixer feeds into the board, and if I bypass the dead channels and route it straight to the backup output." He trailed off, thinking through the signal path. "How long?" Joe asked. 4, maybe 5 minutes. 6 minutes left now. The math was tight. "Do it," Joe said. Dennis grabbed a connection cable from the drawer and started plugging jacks. "Everybody get near the phone. Single-point source means you gotta stay tight, maybe 2 feet radius, or the pickup's gonna be uneven." The brothers clustered around the wall phone. Michael held the receiver at chest height, angled slightly up. Jermaine and Tito leaned in from the sides. Jackie and Marlin framed the back. The phone's plastic casing felt cold against Michael's palm, colder than it should have been. 5 minutes. Dennis ran the cable from the phone line's output to an empty channel on the mixer, then cranked the gain. "Testing. Somebody say something." "Testing," Michael said into the receiver. The needle jumped. Dennis nodded. "Got signal. Switching to transmitter feed? Now." A click, a hum. The on-air light stayed red. "We're live. Phone line only. I'll cue the DJ." 4 minutes left. Through the monitor speaker, the DJ came on. Smooth voice, professional tone, but it could hear the edge underneath. "Folks, we're experiencing some technical difficulties this morning, but the Jackson 5 aren't giving up. What you're about to hear is coming through a telephone line. Sound quality won't be perfect, but it's 100% live. Michael, you ready?" Michael looked at his brothers. 4 faces staring back. Uncertain, but trusting. He thought about the scouts listening somewhere in Chicago, probably reaching for the dial to switch stations. One choice, one moment, one chance. "Ready," he said into the receiver. The pre-recorded instrumental started again. Different tape deck, lower fidelity, but steady. Dennis counted them in with his fingers. 3, 2, 1. Michael started singing. The sound that came through the monitor was thin, compressed. The low end disappeared, the high end tinny and sharp. You could hear the phone line's slight delay, the digital artifacts of a signal never meant for music. But you could also hear him. Clear enough, close enough. 3 minutes left, but something shifted in the room. You could feel it before you could name it. The air changed, the panic stopped. Even Joe's fists unclenched. Something was happening that had nothing to do with the equipment anymore. Jermaine joined on the second line, harmony stacking just under Michael's lead. Tito added rhythmic breath percussion, low pops of air that the phone mic caught and turned into a makeshift beat. Jackie clapped on 2 and 4 close to the receiver. Marlin tapped his foot, audible through the floorboards. It shouldn't have worked. By every standard of broadcast quality, it was a disaster. No bass, no stereo spread, the kind of sound you'd apologize for. But 30 seconds in, the studio phone started ringing. Dennis glanced at it. Let it ring, it stopped, then the second line lit up, then the third, 2 minutes left, and all 4 lines were blinking red. 1 call, 2 calls, 10, 20. The phone board looked like a Christmas tree having a seizure. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not with sound this broken, not through a telephone receiver that cost $12. The manager picked up one, listened for 5 seconds, hung up, picked up another. His expression shifted, confusion giving way to something else. He looked at Michael through the glass and nodded slowly. Joe leaned toward Dennis. What are they saying? They want to know if it's really live. They're clapping along, saying they can hear the realness. 1 minute left, but nobody was watching the clock anymore. Remember this part. The crisis had dissolved, not because it was solved, because something bigger had taken over. Connection. The thing you can't engineer, can't fake, can't schedule. It was just there, humming through a phone line like electricity through copper. Michael didn't change his delivery, kept the same focus, the same energy. But inside something clicked. A small certainty, filed away for later. One truth, one principle, one rule he'd carry forever. People didn't need polish. They needed presence. The song ended. No big finish, just the instrumental fading out under their voices. The phone line hiss filling the gap. For 2 seconds, complete silence. Then the phone lines exploded. The DJ came back on. That was the Jackson 5 live from our studio. Well, live from our phone line. If you were part of that, call us. The lines didn't stop for 20 minutes. Dennis had to pull the cable just to clear the board. When he did, the brothers stepped back from the wall phone, blinking like they'd surfaced from underwater. The fluorescent lights flickered once, then came back full. The main power had returned, but it didn't matter anymore. Joe walked into the studio, looked at Michael, opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. That was smart, he said. Michael set the receiver back on the hook. It worked. Yeah. Joe's voice was quieter than usual. It did. The station manager came in behind him holding a notepad. I've got 5 booking requests already, 2 from stations that heard about it secondhand. 1 newspaper wants an interview. He paused. And one of the scouts called, said it was the most honest thing he'd heard all year. Michael shrugged. We just didn't want to stop. But he knew it was more than that. It wasn't about the phone line. It wasn't about the technical trick. It was about the choice. Keep going, adapt, trust the connection more than the equipment. The brothers packed up. Dennis rewound the tape for the archives. Joe made calls from the manager's office, already booking the next 3 stops. Michael sat on the studio couch, quiet. Tito sat next to him. You knew that would work? Tito asked. No. Then why'd you try it? Michael thought about that. About the meter that kept moving when everything else died. About the dial tone that didn't care if the lights were on. About 15,000 people who chose to stay tuned in even when the sound quality dropped. Because stopping felt worse, he said. Tito nodded. Didn't ask anything else. An hour later, they loaded into the van. Joe drove. The sun was higher now, warming the dashboard. Marlon fell asleep against the window. Jackie hummed the chorus under his breath. Jermaine stared at the passing fields. Michael looked out at the road and thought about the needle on the meter. The small signal that kept moving when everything else went dark. How you had to look for it. How most people wouldn't. Years later, when arena power grids failed mid-show, when wireless systems cut out during live broadcasts, when technical directors panicked and suggested cancellations, Michael would remember that Sunday morning, the phone receiver in his hand. The choice between perfect and real. And he'd make the same call every time, keep the connection, even if the signal's broken, especially then. Because 15,000 people heard it through a telephone line on a Sunday morning and decided that was enough. They stayed, they called in, they remembered, and he never forgot.